1976. Aspen, Colorado is an intoxicating mix of wealth, celebrity, and decadence. At just after 5 p.m. on March 21st, Lieutenant Bill Baldridge is on patrol in his squad car.
I heard the call go out to one of our district cars that there was a shooting at Starwood at Aspen.
Starwood is a gated community that's home to many of Aspen's celebrities.
The chief of security was there at the gate. I just said, come on, go with me, and we went.
Baldridge and Security Chief Roy Griffith reach the chalet. It's the home of pro skier Spider Sabich and his girlfriend Claudine Longer, the ex-wife of famed singer Andy Williams. The door is open. Claudine Longer lies slumped in the hallway, sobbing.
Claudine was there, visually upset, and Griffith asked Claudine what happened. And Claudine told him she shot Spider.
Spider Sabich is on the bathroom floor, bleeding from what appears to be a gunshot wound to the abdomen. An ambulance quickly arrives on the scene to rush Spider to the hospital. A distraught Claudine begs to go with him.
Rather than have the big commotion and what it was going to take to restrain her, I decided to let her go. Get her out of there so I could see what was going on. And so I just sent an officer with her. And I told him that he wasn't to let her out of his sight.
Baldridge and Griffith begin to search the house for clues.
Of course, we wanted the gun, and we wanted the casing. We were really looking for that.
Griffith finds a .22 caliber imitation Luger in the couple's bedroom. But before cops can thoroughly examine the crime scene, they receive a call from the hospital. Spider Sabich is dead on arrival. The official cause of death, internal bleeding.
News of the shooting roared through Aspen like an avalanche. This wasn't just some random killing you read about in the back of the paper. This drama starred the hottest, most alluring couple in town, and everyone was talking.
At the hospital, the district attorney looks to Claudine for answers.
I went by the examining room. What I wanted to do was to perceive what her mental state was, what was going on here. If she was agitated.
She looked troubled and distraught at the time, but she was obviously coherent. She knew where she was and what was going on. It was a serious situation.
Claudine is anxious to tell her story. It was all a terrible accident. Spider was going out of town. She wanted to know how to use the gun for safety.
That was her defense, that Spider was showing her how to use the gun because he was leaving, and it went off accidentally.
She admitted that she was holding the gun at the time, and that there was conversation about the safety being on or off and whether or not the red button showed. And she had made some type of joke, allegedly, to Spider, and said something like bang bang or boom boom, and at the same time the gun discharged, and Spider dropped.
Claudine is very convincing, but investigators are suspicious.
7-5, okay?
Why he would teach her how to use a gun inside the house in the bathroom is beyond me. Well, you know, you're going to teach somebody how to use a gun, take them outside.
We started to wonder immediately about what was going on here and what the reasoning was for her to need a gun. There was no need where that house was at and the security that was afforded that neighborhood at that particular time for her to be worried about herself or the children and immediate maybe intrusion into the home.
Sabich's autopsy reveals that the bullet that killed him ripped through his descending aorta. Claudine's credibility takes another hit when police examine X-rays. Investigators believe that Sabich may have had his back turned when he was shot.
When we saw it in the X-ray, the position of that projectile in him told us that he was bending over and he wasn't paying attention to her.
Claudine's claim that the shooting was an accident is becoming more suspect by the second.
Things weren't quite stacking up as far as what we were seeing at the very early stages of the investigation. So we proceeded with the idea that there possibly could have been premeditation in the shooting.
At 8 p.m., Claudine is taken to the Aspen Police Department and questioned by Lieutenant Baldridge.
There's only two of them there. She had the gun and Spider got shot, so we just went ahead right then and arrested her.
Claudine hires prominent Aspen attorney Ron Austin to represent her.
Just said that you can't book her, I'm taking her out of here on bond, and I said, well, I know you're going to take her out on bond, but I'm going to book her, which I did. We booked her and we released her.
Claudine Langer is charged with homicide and criminal negligence. But this murder suspect has help on the way. At 10 p.m., the Aspen County Airport, normally closed in the evening, is opened for a private jet. On board is Claudine's ex, celebrity crooner Andy Williams.
I mean, these people have a way of doing what they want to do.
At 11 p.m., a judge is awakened and warrants are issued to search the crime scene. Investigators need to take a closer look.
We were looking for, hairs, fibers, anything that would give us a clue whether there'd been a physical altercation or something like that.
The drawers weren't open or ransacked. The furniture in the room was fine. It was lacking, really, any physical evidence.
There wasn't anything earth-shattering there, except for that diary.
Langer's diary was on top of the dresser. It was a large book, and she had been writing in it, obviously.
What secrets lurked in that leather-bound diary? With all of Aspen clamoring for answers, it looked like Claudine's life was about to become an open book.
Everybody was very upset, extremely sad. Their town hero had just been killed, and no one could really believe it.
The shocking news of Spider Sabich's death rockets through Aspen on the morning of March 22nd, 1976.
I heard it on the radio the next day, and then I read about it in the weekly Aspen Times. It was the buzz of the town.
Claudine Langer, spotlight on Aspen.
The town was not happy on any level. A lot of the community was very upset that this very bad publicity had fallen in our direction, and that America's top ski racer was dead at the hands of some paramour.
Claudine Langer had finally made it to center stage, but it wasn't the kind of fame she'd spent her life in search of.
Claudine Langer always dreamed of fame and fortune. At 18, she left her Paris home for the neon lights of Las Vegas. Trading on her authentic French roots, she landed a coveted spot in the Folies Bergère, Vegas's hottest new burlesque show.
She was quite unique. Between her French accent and her very gentle voice and her waif-like appearance, she was very different.
But Claudine's big break didn't come on stage at the Tropicana. After a show one night, her car stalled. A good Samaritan pulled over to help. Behind the wheel was singer and Vegas headliner Andy Williams. The 33-year-old bachelor found the young exotic showgirl from Paris irresistible. Despite a 14-year age difference, they were married on Christmas Day, 1961.
I guess Claudine's car broke down at just the right time. In 1962, Andy Williams released his signature song, Moon River. He was quickly becoming one of America's favorite crooners.
Andy Williams was many times mentioned in the same category as a Frank Sinatra or a Perry Como or the people who were really big back then. He appealed to the public and they liked him. He was kind of a nice guy image, a nice guy who was one of us.
The couple moved into a seaside mansion in Malibu as Williams' career took off. Then, in 1963, the crooner landed his own TV show and quickly became one of the most popular entertainers in the country. That same year, Claudine gave birth to the couple's first child, Noel. A son, Christian, arrived the following year. But Claudine still hungered for the spotlight, and her husband's success opened doors otherwise closed to the ingenue. She began appearing frequently as a guest on The Andy Williams Show.
She was not like your usual American superstar, and that seemed to touch some sort of a chord with the public, and they were interested in her. She also was a nobody who became the wife of a superstar.
She and her husband had the #1 television show in the history of television at that time, their Christmas show. It took maybe 3 or 4 Super Bowls to finally eclipse them as a gross rating point.
Lange took her own turn at singing and would go on to record 7 albums. Like her husband, easy listening covers became Claudine's specialty.
I think that the fact that she was Andy Williams' wife would get attention from people in the recording industry more than if she was not. She was not anybody that would have become as famous had she not been Andy Williams' wife.
I used to see Andy and Claudine at parties when I was living in Beverly Hills in the 1960s. She was absolutely stunning, and Claudine and Andy were very popular on the party circuit.
In 1969, Claudine gave birth to a 3rd child, Bobby, named after the couple's good friend, Bobby Kennedy. On the surface, Claudine and Andy seemed to have it all: money, fame, the perfect family, fabulous friends. But later that year, the couple shocked the public. They announced they were separating. The storybook marriage was over.
She wanted to get Hollywood in her rearview mirror, That's why she came to Aspen.
Aspen in the 1970s is a freewheeling community of thrill seekers, trust fund bohemians, and vacationing celebrities. An ideal place for the stunning chanteuse to land.
Claudine, at that time, everybody said, "Oh my God, a woman, she gave off heat."
One weekend at a celebrity ski exhibition, Claudine meets Aspen, Colorado's homegrown hero, pro skier Spider Sabich. He was young, he was handsome, and he was rich.
Spider was king. Everyone looked up to Spider. Everyone wanted to be Spider.
He could have any bunny on the slope. There was always a group around him, and he was having himself a pretty good time.
There is an instant attraction. Claudine wants to see Spider again. She taps mutual friend, pro skier Billy Kidd, for help.
But she wangled an invitation to stay that weekend at Billy Kidd's house. We were invited to Billy's house for dinner. That's how it got started.
By the end of the weekend, Spider and Claudine are inseparable.
In the beginning, it was a very intense, passionate relationship.
It was a world-class love affair.
A dashing Olympian and his sultry French girlfriend. Spider and Claudine turned heads wherever they went. But, as Cole Porter once wrote, this affair was too hot not to cool down.
Spider Sabich was a hero in Aspen. He was probably their most famous resident at the time that he died. He was very handsome, he was very dashing, and he was a member of the community, and everybody loved him.
In the aftermath of Spider Sabich's death, investigators are sifting through evidence, trying to piece together what happened. And all of Aspen is asking, how could a storybook life end in such tragedy? Born Vladimir Sabich in 1945 in Kibbutz, California, Spider faced an uphill battle from day one.
Spider was a preemie, he was kind of in a box with a heating lamp over him at the nurse's station, and he was all arms and legs, so his dad said he looks like a spider, so he was Spider all his life.
It wouldn't take long for the scrawny baby to turn into a brawny bomber on the slopes. As a teenager, Spider aced one competition after another. He went on to win 2 world championships, and in 1968 competed in the Winter Olympics, placing 5th. In 1971, Sabich moved to Aspen, Colorado. Pro skiing in America was just taking off, and Aspen was the place to be.
For a town where skiing was so young, and especially young in America, he was extremely important to the sport and to us, and someone that we were very proud of. You could have compared him to Joe Namath, what he did for football. Spider certainly was up there doing that for skiing.
A growing sport needed stars, and Spider was a star. All-American and articulate, the media latched onto him, and sponsors showered him with money. Soon, he was earning more than $200,000 a year in prize money and endorsements. At 27, he was the richest pro skier on the circuit, and no one personified Aspen's swinging lifestyle better.
You have to understand what kind of a guy he was. He was already, in 1976 dollars, worth $250,000. Owned a house on Starwood. Owned it. Paid for it. His neighbors were John Denver, Edgar Stearns, who owned Sears. Spider's a remarkable individual.
In 1972, Spider meets Claudine Longet, and Aspen's swinging bachelor is off the market. Claudine has found yet another rich, accomplished man, and their relationship flourishes quickly. By 1974, Longet and her 3 children move into Sabich's sprawling chalet in Starwood. The couple quickly steps front and center into Aspen's thriving nightlife.
Spider and Claudine became fixtures on the Aspen party circuit, and in the 70s, it was quite a scene. Back then, it wasn't just the slopes that were frosted with white powder.
There was whiskey, pot, cocaine, and a strong health ethic, if you can imagine all 4 of those blended together.
Everybody worked hard so they could play hard, and play was the primary goal, and everyone did it rather well.
At the non-stop string of late-night parties, Claudine takes on the familiar role as second fiddle to a more famous mate.
She was an outsider who had come to their town and moved in with her children and captured the most eligible bachelor in town, Spider Sabich. There was a lot of resentment against her.
To suddenly be hampered by someone who wanted all his attention, all the time, to the point of not wanting anybody, any outside influences, it was a drain.
By 1975, friends begin seeing cracks in the facade of Spider and Claudine's storybook romance.
He and I were standing on the other side of the room from where Claudine and her sister were sitting, and his eyes got really big. He was looking over my shoulder, and I felt something come past my ear, and I watched a wine glass hit him in the chest, break up, and fall to the floor. And Spider just looked up at me and he said, "Lily, I think Claudine's trying to get my attention."
Professionally, Sabich is facing pressure of a different kind. A compressed vertebra has knocked him from the top of the sport. By the 1976 season, he's ready to take himself off the pro circuit for good. With less pressure to perform on the slopes, Sabich's late-night partying increases, but Claudine is often left home to care for her 3 children.
She was so intensely jealous. Everybody by that time was pretty much had realized, including Spider, that this was beginning to be a very damaging relationship. And it wasn't like Spider to surround himself with that kind of negativity.
By January of 1976, Spider Sabich has had enough.
They began fighting more and more, and it got to the point where I had dinner. He said, "I just cannot get rid of her. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to get her out. I don't want to hurt the children, but she won't leave. Tell me what to do."
Spider makes up his own mind. In early March, he asks Claudine to be out of the house by April 1st.
He asked me to go for a walk with him. We walked for a long time. That's when I learned that she was moving out, she and the kids, and it was over.
Claudine must have been in a state when Spider asked her to pack up and ship out. And without the Golden Boy by her side, her life in Aspen would head downhill fast.
Just days after the shooting, investigators are trying to piece together why Claudine Longet pulled the trigger. Looking for answers, they turn their attention to her relationship with Spider Sabich.
The interviews had told us that the relationship had been deteriorating and that Spider had made the decision that his relationship with Claudine was not going to go any further. And it was a very tragic situation and a very difficult situation.
It did become a drag on his life, I think. It became difficult for him to have friendships. He had asked her repeatedly to move out, and the only reason she wasn't thrown out was because of her children. He really loved her children.
Police discover that Spider and Claudine spent the morning of March 21st apart. He hit the slopes. She went into town.
Claudine was spotted sipping wine at an upscale local bar called Little Nell's. Later that afternoon, she joined Spider at a party thrown by ABC sportscaster Bob Beatty.
A few people just noted that they didn't be quite as close as they usually were. They left the party separately.
Investigators learned that after the party, Claudine drove around Aspen looking for Spider.
She was driving erratically and recklessly. She was beside herself to get hold of Spider. She was one mad lady.
And then she drove through the security gate in Starwood at a high rate of speed, and the next thing you know, there was a report of someone having been shot.
Now, just days after the shooting, forensic evidence begins to punch holes into Claudine's story. Analyzing gunpowder residue on Sabich's body, a ballistics expert determines that Claudine was standing at least 6 feet away from Spider when the gun was fired. Why would she be so far away if Spider was showing her how to use the gun?
It was inside of 10, but no closer than 6 feet. She had to be standing on the far side of the bedroom near the bathroom door.
When officers examine the bathroom, they find more inconsistencies.
Looking at how the bathroom was, it was pretty apparent that he was bending over, he was cleaning up, and in the house you could see where he was preparing to shave at the time. And the projectile struck him low at the bottom of the rib cage and then traveled because he was bent over. So he had his back turned to Claudine when she was talking to him.
Police also discover that Spider was a skilled outdoorsman who knew how to handle guns.
Anybody that knew Spider knew that he was raised with guns. His father was a highway patrolman. They knew guns, and they knew where to keep them and how to use them, and they never, ever would have pulled a gun out that was loaded in a house and let someone inexperienced use it. That just would never have happened. When I found out he was shot in his bathroom, that I knew that she had to have done it on purpose.
There was things that weren't stacking up. There was really no need for the gun to be out. So the weight of the story about wanting to see the gun and make sure how it works and so forth just wasn't meeting muster in our mind at that time.
A closer examination of the spent cartridge found in the gun yields another troubling clue. According to District Attorney Frank Tucker, small indentations are clearly visible in the area where the gun's hammer would strike the cartridge.
The gun failed to fire 2, 3, 4, 5 times. She just kept hammering on the same cylinder. If you're just asking for a little demo, dear, on how to protect yourself, you don't start firing the gun multiple times, pointed in the direction of the guy that's giving you the instructions.
Had the gun not jammed, there may have been more than one shot fired from that gun.
She probably would have shot him as many bullets as in the gun, but it jammed on the first one. So.
Police suspicions of premeditated murder are high. Investigators next turn to motive and to Claudine Longer's diary.
I examined the diaries. The motive for all of this was right there. And there was Spider, and he was there, and he was telling her that on the 1st of April she was toast, and she was down the Starwood Road. And she wasn't going to have that. She was going to bring it under control. She was going to manage this guy to the extent that he was not going to dump her. And that was what the diaries were about.
The prosecution thought they could use Claudine's own words to map out a motive, but she wasn't about to be taken down so easily.
As investigators close in on the truth about what led to Spider Sabich's death, rumors are sweeping across the small resort town.
Well, you heard everything. You heard that it was a total accident. You heard that it might not have been an accident. You heard stories from people who really had no information at all. Rumors were flying, and no one really knew what to believe.
Aspen's reaction to the shooting was extremely surprised. I mean, everybody was, what is this? This couldn't be. And yes, it was.
I'd say that 90% of the people in Aspen considered it murder.
Aspen went into deep mourning over the loss of Spider Sabich, but nobody shed a single tear for Claudine. The court of public opinion was stacked against her.
Prosecutors believe that Claudine's diary proves that she shot Spider in cold blood. On April 8, 1976, Claudine is arraigned on charges of homicide and criminal intent. She pleads not guilty. Langer and her ex-husband, Andy Williams, immediately put their wealth and connections into action. They hire one of Los Angeles' most prominent criminal defense attorneys, Charles Weidman.
Reasonable doubt for a reasonable price. The good attorneys, the best criminal defense attorneys, have a high batting average. And obviously there was an unlimited budget. She got the best that money can buy.
Celebrity coupled with money is deadly to the justice system. Celebrity comes in the front door, justice goes right out the back door.
The trial is set for January 1977. Immediately, the defense goes on the attack. They file a pretrial motion seeking to have the diary thrown out.
They wanted to suppress the evidence that we had taken because obviously it wasn't in the interest of their client. Certainly they didn't want the diary. So we had that fight.
Ron Austin argues that police had specifically listed Claudine's diary on their search warrant request, but Langer says the diary was hidden in her dresser drawer, and that police wouldn't have known the diary existed unless they had already searched for it prior to getting the warrant. To prove their case, the defense uses the police department's own photographs of the bedroom.
As we went through the room photographing, one of the detectives removed the diary to read it and was thumbing through it sitting on the bed. As I came around and photographed that particular piece of furniture, my first photographs depicted the dresser bare.
And I knew it might have evidentiary value. I did flip it open, took one look and just shut her down and backed away from it.
Baldridge placed the diary back on top of the dresser. Fisher then photographed the room a second time.
First it showed it bare, and then it showed the diary back on the dresser. My own photographs of the crime scene supported their allegation that it had come from the third drawer, or at least led the court to believe the possibility that he existed.
A diary found in a closed drawer is private and protected. The judge rules it inadmissible.
Obviously, when we lost the diary, we couldn't show why she was moving out and that she was moving out and that there was pressure for her to move and that there was a relationship that was splintered and that she was very upset and angry about the fact that she had lost another guy.
The defense then argues that on the night of Spider Sabich's death, police mishandled the .22 caliber pistol.
Roy Griffith found a gun on the bed and hands it to a cop who takes it in a handkerchief and puts it in the glove compartment of the car. I mean, that is verboten.
Then the gun mysteriously is unaccounted for a while, and what had happened was it originally stayed in the sheriff's office car for some time. It resulted in a real issue of suppression or possible suppression at the trial under a chain of custody issue.
When the gun was found, an inexperienced officer removed the spent cartridge.
This scene was so contaminated by the time that the true investigators showed up, there were bound to be legal problems looming over the horizon.
Because the officer is not a gun expert, his testimony is denied.
Somebody disarmed the gun who was not a gun-qualified expert, who was not qualified to testify about disassembling and assembling guns, and the judge was such that he wouldn't allow it in evidence.
The prosecution now has to make its case against Claudine without its two biggest pieces of evidence.
The difference between criminally negligent homicide and first-degree murder is in the misfiring of the gun and our inability to show the trigger was pulled more than once. So we never did get that in there.
What seemed like a slam dunk for the prosecution was no longer a cut-and-dried case. Press from around the world were turning their attention on Aspen, and the demure actress with the French accent was about to take center stage.
In early January 1977, the long-awaited trial of Claudine Longet is about to begin. Press from around the globe descend on Aspen.
They were stars, and the killing of Spider Sabich was a huge story. And it was probably the first big celebrity trial of the era. There had not been many of them at that point. And it drew a press corps that was enormous. It drew attention to Aspen that was different than any attention Aspen had ever had.
The trial turned the quiet Rocky Mountain village into a circus. I think longtime Aspen resident Hunter Thompson had it right when he said it was like fouling your own nest.
We had people jumping around and coming running up to you and asking you all these stupid questions. One gal, and I heard one reporter in a restaurant say, "This is the best ever. We have murder, we have sex, and we have drugs."
The locals hated the photographers so much that they would play games where they tried to run them down with their cars, and they would yell out the car windows, "Vultures!" It was not a friendly atmosphere.
Claudine Longet knew that in this atmosphere, image was everything. To alter hers, she turns to Sidney Stone, the self-proclaimed seamstress to the stars.
One day there was a phone call, and it was Claudine. And she said, in her French accent, she said, "I have to go to court, you know." And I said, "Yes, I know." She said, "I would like you to help me with court clothes."
Claudine showed up to jury selection in a baggy gray dress and fry boots, fighting to hold back her tears. It was the height of melodrama, and the trial hadn't even started yet.
I got the idea that she needed to look innocent. She was very beautiful, tiny, that French accent, and a drop-dead body. So, of course, that wouldn't do. So I dressed her in pleated skirts, crew neck sweaters, with little Peter Pan collar blouses to kind of hide her attractiveness, shall we say.
Everybody in town was involved in this trial. It was not like anyone was immune to it. The people at the restaurants, the people in the shops, everyone was talking about it. Everyone had an opinion about it.
The trial commences on January 10th. It quickly turns into a star-studded affair.
There were a lot of paparazzi in town. Andy Williams was in the courtroom every day as a support figure. The benches in the courtroom were pretty much sold out every day because of the interest.
Inside the courtroom, the prosecution knows there is little chance to get a conviction for the premeditated murder without the gun and the diary. They decide to focus on the reckless manslaughter charge. Their argument? Claudine was pointing the gun at Spider. She should have known it could go off.
We didn't have to show that there were jealous lovers. We had to show nothing other than the fact, the reckless actions of the other person. The other person should have known full well that what they were doing could end a life.
We weren't painting a picture with friends and so forth. We were painting a factual picture and sticking really with facts as we knew them to be.
The prosecution rests after just 2 days. The defense starts by calling to the stand the only living person who knows what happened that night, Claudine Longet.
Claudine Longet was a woman under siege during that trial, and she had a very, very soft voice. to the extent that when she testified, the jurors had to lean forward in their chairs to hear her, and so did everyone in the courtroom.
She insists the shooting was an accident. The gun went off as Sabich was showing her how to use it. He promised her the safety was secure. They were in love and the best of friends. She had no reason to want him dead.
She's presenting herself in a figureless outfit and without a great deal of flair, if you will, for the fashion. It's simple, it's quaint, and the demeanor during the testimony was very diminutive and soft and gentle, and just, I don't know how this happened.
Her demeanor was very good in court, on the stand. Claudine's an actress.
3 days after the trial opens, the defense rests. The jury deliberates for just under 3 hours.
The jury came in. Claudine was sitting there at the table, nervously looking at all of them.
The verdict? Guilty. Not of manslaughter, but of a lesser charge, negligent homicide. The conviction could bring up to 2 years in prison.
There is not very much to say. Only that I have too much respect and love for living things to be guilty of that crime. And I am not guilty of it.
The following week, all of Aspen is anxious to hear Judge George Lohr's sentence.
Most of the people believed that this was murder, and most of the people sided with Spider Sabich, and most of the people wanted to see a conviction and a long sentence.
Judge Lohr sentences Claudine Longet to 30 days in the Pitkin County Jail with a $250 fine. It's a far cry from the 2-year max, and Claudine is also allowed the luxury of doing her time when it's convenient. The Sabich family and most of Aspen is in shock.
It was just another incredible slap-in-the-face offense. And this wasn't any jail. This was Pitkin County Jail. It was like Mayberry with really good room service, you know. And I was stunned. Speeders get that. I mean, not murderers.
On the night of the verdict, I went out into the street in the snow and cold and tried to interview people, and people were very unforgiving. There was a woman who actually said to me, "What's wrong? Don't they burn people at the stake anymore?" There was hatred in that town for Claudine Longet.
An awful lot of people were very angry and vindictive and threatened Claudine. When they expressed their anger, it was either at Claudine or at the system or at both.
The district attorney's office. We did what we were supposed to do. The judge did not. It negated his life.
Immediately after the trial, Claudine slips off to Mexico for a seaside vacation. 5 months later, when her kids are out of school, Claudine serves her 30 days at the Pitkin County Jail. She does some redecorating.
She had painted her cell pink. I believe it was pink. Now, I don't know if that's sort of standard issue when you go to jail, that you get to paint your cell the color of your choice, but it was Aspen.
The Sabich family files a $1.3 million wrongful death suit against Claudine. But the case is settled out of court when Longet agrees never to speak publicly about Spider Sabich's death or their relationship again. While Claudine did serve her time, those closest to Spider feel she paid too small a price for a life lost.
She was initially charged with reckless manslaughter, and the jury reduced that to negligent homicide, which was the lowest conviction they could find for her. It was a misdemeanor.
I don't think justice was served, but I think that, it has to hurt a little bit when you're on the receiving end. And it certainly didn't bother Claudine. Claudine went right on with her life.
It wasn't the right thing. Non-negligent homicide, that's a misdemeanor. And you don't take somebody's life and be charged with misdemeanor. unless it truly was an accident. I don't believe this was an accident.
She killed him one way or another, but I didn't hear of very many people that didn't feel that she had just robbed us all of a really incredible human being.
After the trial, Mick Jagger wrote a song called Claudine that mocked her role in the killing and her light sentence. The song was slated for the Rolling Stones' Emotional Rescue album, but due to legal wrangling, it has never been released. Claudine married her defense attorney Ron Austin in 1985, and the two continue to keep a home in Aspen. For Court TV, I'm Dominic Dunn.